Operation Truth. The show they don't want you to see. Now, here's your host, Lou.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lou Palumbo. With me is Tom Fuentes, as always, my colleague and cohort, co-conspirator. Many of these words apply today the way we're living in America. This is Operation Truth. We're going to make it simple. We're going to tell you the truth. Tom and I are not politically leaning in the sense that we're inclined to, I would say, alter our stories or our narrative to fill a particular political agenda. We're really just here to tell you the truth. And I want to start out with the truth about what happened this week with the debate and the fallout as a result, and the negativity of what we're learning about our political system and some of those in the Democrat Party that are insistent upon telling you and making you believe you didn't see what you saw. There are people who are Democrats that realize that the president is in trouble. I said this years ago when he first got sworn in. When you start to see the man's feet shuffle, that's the brain. The brain controls the motor skills. They allowed this to linger for the past 3.5 years, and now we've hit a crossroad. We listened to them make reference to all these false claims about his declining state. Tragically, this is Father Time. Father Time gets us all. He just gets us in different ways. In regards to the debate, in addition to the fact that I am gravely alarmed as to the cognitive state of the president, I was disappointed with Donald Trump's performance because I would say, to put it to you politely, Biden threw him a couple of softballs, and I'll give you one example. And Tom doesn't exactly agree with me, and I want Tom to tell you why. He brought up the fact that he was a convicted felon. My response would have been, at least I have the cognitive state to participate in the judicial system. Robert Hur, special counsel, identified the fact you committed multiple felonies and recklessly and irresponsibly handling and intentionally handling classified information as a U.S. senator. You then provided that information to your ghostwriter and a publisher so you could get an $8 million book deal. I would have liked to have heard Donald Trump say that. And by the way, I'm not saying that because I'm a Trump supporter. I'm giving you the truth. When you go down this path with me about referencing people as alley cats, be very careful you don't live in a glass house. I've looked at his son. I've looked at Mr. Biden. I've looked how they failed to embrace a 4-year-old little girl in Arkansas that carries his DNA and his blood through her veins. Her son got involved with London Roberts, regardless of what she did for a living. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, don't judge people until you walk a mile in their shoes. I'm going to go right to Tom right now about some of my perceptions about Trump's performance, and I know he's going to give you his perceptions, and Tom's going to be able to talk to you legally about where this should go possibly with the FBI and the Department of Justice. So, Tom, I know we spoke about this, and you're not exactly, I would say, in alignment with my thinking that Trump should have really addressed some of these issues like alley cat comments and being a felon. He also, Tom, for the record, I would have loved to have him say that Christopher Wray, your FBI director, on a monthly basis and perhaps even more frequently, reminds this country that the southern border of the United States is a threat to our national security and fentanyl is flowing in. You know, they tried to talk about the border issue with him. So, Tom, I now come to you. Your feelings on Trump's performance?
Yeah, Lou, what I think was that he's been taking so much abuse, that he's so mean and he's so vicious and he's this and he's that, he's a bully. And I think that was a strategy deliberately done by Trump to just basically go easy on a man that is obviously deeply, deeply troubled, and that's Biden. So I think it was just on purpose not to gang up on him, not to bully him, not to hit him with everything he could have hit him with. I agree. It was disappointing to watch Trump just take all that from Biden, you know, being called, you're a felon. I think that's the only thing he responded to is when he said, you're a felon. And he said, yeah, so is your son. But a lot of this stuff was just, I think, deliberate because they figured that it would only backfire on Trump if he really jumped on Biden too much.
You see, Tom, and I hear what you say, and I understand your rationale behind that, but I have to be candid with you. I don't agree with that approach. I know you've articulated.
No, I agree. I'm not saying it's my rationale.
Exactly.
I think that was his strategy.
Yeah.
That's why he did it.
And I think if there was any time for Trump to step up and just be blatantly honest about what's going on here. That was the opportunity. He's busy calling people names that don't apply. I mean, like, he dignifies a lot of stupidity, Tom. You know that, and I know that. You know, Meryl Streep made a comment about him. He started to demean Meryl Streep, telling everybody she's a terrible actress, which she isn't. She happens to be a brilliant entertainer. But this was an opportunity for him to go at the core of this problem, which is the truth. You know, in addition, we got into this discussion about having not lost servicemen during our watch. And Biden stood there and bold-faced lied to everybody. He didn't lose anyone. You know, my question to the Democrats, and I'm not anti-Democrat. Let me be clear about something. My favorite all-time president across the board has been John F. Kennedy, a conservative Democrat who would not exist today. By the way, they're alluding to the fact that maybe Bill Clinton wouldn't as well. Now, I want to throw into that conversation Ronald Reagan. So I'm not anti-Democrat, but this is about anti-insanity. What makes the Democrats believe, Tom, that they have the legal right, stay with me, Tom, because I'm coming to you on this one, buddy, the legal right to intentionally deceive and mislead this populace, their own constituents, and the American public in general? Is there anything else attached to this, Tom, perhaps as far as an investigation goes with DOJ or FBI?
We've had more than 3 years of lies from the mainstream media. Oh, Biden's perfect. He's sharp. There's nothing wrong with him. All of the Democratic hierarchy, all of the people that voted in the prime. How many million people voted for Biden for another presidential term in all the primaries? So you've had all of these people gaslighting us. Recently, you've had Jean-Pierre, his spokesman at the podium, saying, oh, no, you know, these are doctored videos. You're not seeing the truth when you see Biden wander off or trip and everything. So they've all been lying. Now, where do you draw the line on that from a legal thing in the political system? You know, we've had all these political charges going back and forth on different people. I don't think anybody's going to hold anybody else accountable for the fact that the Democrats ran this guy for president 4 years ago. He was already cognitively impaired at that time, but they were lucky. They could keep him in the basement using COVID as an excuse. And then, you know, he's president. He's demonstrated from day one these difficulties, can't put a sentence together, and then picks Kamala Harris as vice president. Between the two of them, they can't put a sentence together or keep a coherent thought or make a logical or legal or persuasive argument on any single subject. We've seen this all along, and all we've gotten out of the media and his spokespeople is, don't believe your lying eyes. He's fine. Even Gavin Newsom 2 weeks ago on a Sunday morning talk show said, I would support this guy 100%. He's sharp as a tack. He's brilliant. He's great. His accomplishments are unbelievable. Yeah, well, he's driven the country into the ground. That is unbelievable.
Well, you know, Tom, the reality of the situation is that we're in trouble. And here's a bigger problem. One of the questions that was posed to Donald Trump during the debate was, would you accept the outcome of the election? And he intelligently answered, I believe he said, if it was fair and free, which should have sufficed. And I just want to remind the Democrats that when you would like people to trust you, stop engaging or participating in deceitful acts. I'm going to go right back to Bernie Sanders, folks. Bernie Sanders was fed the primary questions in advance of the CNN primaries with Hillary Clinton. It cost Donna Brazile her job. One example of this. He got her. What did he do? Didn't declare that he should be the president. We now get into this whole mode of covering up with Joe Biden. You know, this entire exercise on January 6th, which is sickening. Guys, you can't stage an insurrection unarmed. You can't take over the Capitol with armed people and an armed police department, the Washington, D.C. Metro Police, unless you're armed. Now, Trump was posed with that question. Mr. Trump, I thought he could think on his feet better than this. I was a little disappointed, Tom. I'm going to give you a chance to respond. His response should have been, this is quite simple. Anyone that entered that Capitol or came onto its grounds with the intent to cause damage or harm should be fully prosecuted to the entire extent of the law. But let me remind everyone, if you were on the block, you got prosecuted. Am I right, Tom?
That's right.
And unfortunately,
that's right. You had people that never went in the building. They were just nearby where it was the designated area for protesters. They still got prosecuted. And the problem is with the power of the Department of Justice. When they come after you like that, most people don't have tens of thousands of dollars to spend in their own defense. So when they're telling people, it'd go a lot better, a lot of people did that and got sentenced to 8 or 10 years in prison. So I think that, and you've had Trump talking about that from day one. And now you've had this week the Supreme Court decision that's going to really, cause them to have to relook at several of these cases that were an injustice when they were done.
Well, what we're seeing right now, once again, Tom, is the Democrats exercising of destabilizing or destroying the credibility of more of our institutions. They want us to just kind of sign on and get in lockstep with anything they promote. But the minute someone makes a ruling like the Supreme Court, let us attack its credibility. Do they understand long-term what you're doing to this country, that you are destabilizing this country, that you continue to destroy the credibility of every institution in this society? And ladies and gentlemen, I hate to break everyone's hearts. That isn't the Republicans. That is the Democrats. You look at who's steering your educational institutions. You look what happened with CDC, science and medicine over this COVID virus. You look at what happened with this Afghan pullout. You look at what's going on in the Middle East. I mean, look what's going on in the Ukraine. We can't get a straight, truthful answer that lends itself to what's in the best interest of this country. This is all agenda driven. And I have to tell you something. I find no comfort in being critical of the Democrats. I have friends of mine that are Democrats. I'm struggling to understand how you could just get in lockstep and go lie after lie because you don't like Donald Trump personally. Folks, I want to tell you a little secret. I'm in an interesting business where I have to brush up against people on a very personal level. If I started to eliminate the clients I didn't want to work for based on how much I liked them or respected them, I might be in trouble here. Let me be candid with you. But I do go back and say this. When you need brain surgery or heart surgery and the doctor has poor bedside manner a la Donald Trump, you don't care. And even big critics like Ken Langone, who has nothing but disdain for Trump, Jamie Dimon, chairman and CEO of Chase Bank, both came out and said the same thing. Grew the economy, right on NATO, right on borders and immigration, right on China. We were energy independent. These are Democrats saying this. These are not Republicans. Guys, you better step away from your political lens, your personal likes and dislikes, and look at the direction this country's going and how it's going to impact your children. It's a shame that we live in a nation that we don't love our children as much as we love our political agenda. And to all of you that have more money than God, you know what I figured out? Wealthy people can afford to be liberal because you live in gated communities and you hire lunatics like me to keep you safe when you decide to go shopping or dining or to the theater. That's the truth. They don't live in the same mainstream of America that everyone else does. This is absolutely sickening, Tom. I don't think, Tom, you see it much different, do you?
The biggest issue I have with these guys, with the whole Democrat Party is, okay, you have Joe Biden issue policy orders and executive orders starting day one of his presidency, open the borders, stop the drilling, stop exploration, do all of these things that are so harmful. And yet what happens is the rest of the Democratic Party gets behind that like a herd of rats. You don't have any leadership there saying, wait a minute, we can't have this. We can't have our entire country invaded by 10 or 15,000 migrants. We can't allow all of our energy to go, not be explored, not be drilled, not be set up so that it causes massive inflation when the truckers have to spend $2,000 to load their trucks with gasoline or diesel fuel to bring the products from the farms to the grocery stores to the factories to wherever it might be. But you've got this herd of Democrats that are like a herd of rats, like I said. So you have recently the House impeaches Mayorkas after doing nothing since they got control of the House for 2 years about the border, but they file articles of impeachment against Mayorkas. And what happens in the Democratic Senate? You have the leader, Chuck Schumer, tear him up and say, no, we're not even going to hear the case. I don't even know if he has a constitutional right to refuse that. The House issues the articles. The Senate is supposed to be the trial court. The senators, the jury, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is supposed to be the trial judge. And Schumer decides on his own, we're not even going to have it. We're just going to throw that out. Mayorkas is exonerated because he says so. And nobody else says boo about it. Now, they would not have gotten 67 senators to find Mayorkas guilty. That's for sure. But, they should have had the Senate trial for all of the evidence to be presented, which they didn't want the American people to hear months before the upcoming election, how bad it really is in the decisions that are being made about the safety of the country.
Let me say something to all of you that you're listening to. This lends itself to your honor, your integrity, and your trustworthiness that the Democrats are dealing away on a daily basis. Mr. Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Gavin Newsom, I'm sure I'm going to miss a few, Blumenthal, all of you that sit there and tell the American public that this man is fit to hold office, you should be ashamed of yourself, and they should pursue you criminally for intentionally putting this country in harm's way. I just want to ask one question to all of those that say he had a bad night. What happens if he has one of these bad nights and there's some type of exchange of weaponry in this country? By the way, let me brush on an interesting policy that's going on right now, not to go off on a tangent, Tom, because we're going to talk about Russia and their positioning off the coast of Florida. We are supplying weaponry to the Ukraine. I got it. There's a whole discussion about whether it's proportional or not. I've spoken to that. We're now finding out that the munitions that we're giving the Ukraine are being used in Russia. I'm trying to figure out whose idea was that. Why couldn't those munitions have been limited to being used to defend or to address the Russians in the country of the Ukraine? Just one quick question, Joe. Are you not concerned about getting us into a nuclear war? I'm looking at the Democrats today, and I can see they're divided. Tom, I know you probably did the same thing I did. I watched CNN for 3 hours after the debate. It said it all. There wasn't a single person on that panel that had anything positive to say about this debate on behalf of Joe Biden. And the lockstep agreement was there's something wrong with him cognitively. You know, we cannot continue to go in this direction, guys. We've got to be able to trust the people we elect to represent us. That just simply isn't the case. When AOC, who is a bartender, guys, let me tell you something. I was a bartender. You learn a lot about people. How I learned about this journey was traveling, learning about people, places, myself, bumping into people smarter than I am. I'm listening to this little girl, and I don't mean to be demeaning. She was a bartender, and in her mid to later 20s, she became a House of Representatives member. And I listened to her talk. She couldn't find popcorn in a movie theater. Go travel this journey. Figure out what's going on here in this country and the world. Then come back and tell me what you think you know about this country. I forgot more about what this country's doing than this little girl's ever going to know. And I keep referring to her that way because that's exactly what she is. And that she shoots her mouth off about undermining the credibility of the Supreme Court of the United States. Shame on you. You're also another Biden supporter trying to tell the American public what you think you saw. You didn't see. We've gone through this, Tom. Am I not right? Wasn't this their mantra for the past 2, 3, 4 weeks? What you're seeing isn't what you're seeing. Well, we just had it on debate night.
But that's
what the hell's
not an
going
original
on here?
idea, Lou. That this is something that President Roosevelt in the 1930s with the New Deal was trying to do. He threatened to pack the court because the Supreme Court was finding many of the measures that he was putting into effect unconstitutional. And he basically threatened the court. We're going to pack the court. We're going to add several dozen more justices if necessary, so the rulings are more favorable. And then what happened is Supreme Court backed off and started to not declare unconstitutional the Works Progress Administration, many of the CCC, some of the other things that were put in place during the New Deal, they suddenly found a way to approve of. And now that's what you've had here lately in the last couple of years. The Democrats don't like all of the decisions that come down, so they're going to pack the court. They're going to pack the court. They're going to pack the Senate by making Washington, D.C. a state and Puerto Rico a state, which would guarantee them 4 Democratic senators, which then it's not this close up Senate, one too many Democrats or Republicans. The Democrats will have the permanent lead by doing that. So all of this kind of stuff has been brought up in the past. And you're right. The people that have brought it up weren't even as smart as AOC. So that's a clue how stupid the whole idea is.
I want to go back to this January 6th discussion just for 1 second, guys. I understand what an insurrection is. I know what a coup is. We all have learned about it, Tom and myself in particular, in our travels, professionally, career-wise, and educationally in these institutions we both attended. I'm trying to figure out how the Democrats can sell you that this was an insurrection without being armed. What are you possibly taking over if you're incapable of carrying out that task because you're ill-equipped? You know, this goes right back to this whole thing about this jumbled, misguided, intentionally deceitful and lying agenda of the Democrats. And again, I find no comfort in saying this. We need a healthy Democrat Party.
Who puts their agenda out? The media. The media has been an arm of the Democratic Party for a long time, and certainly throughout the Biden administration. So that they wouldn't get to first base with any of the stupidity they come up with if the media wasn't echoing it on their behalf.
Well, Tom, you and I both know that the media has decided to become extensions of these political entities without oversight, I might know.
That's right.
And I listened to Mika Brzezinski. Right. I'd like to know what is in her background that qualifies her to be a talking head, which is at best what she is. I know who your dad was. I know who Brzezinski was in our history. Like him or not like him, this man had some level of credibility. What is it where did you come from to sit here and undermine everything we do in this country because it's not politically aligned with you? That's not your job. You're supposedly posing as a journalist. You're supposed to give us objective, unbiased information, not your personal feelings on things. And Joe Scarborough, I don't know what the hell happened to you. You're not the Joe Scarborough I used to watch on MSNBC morning show before Donald Trump showed up. It's like you drank the Kool-Aid, and I could say something even more disgustingly graphic that might be influencing your thinking, but I choose not to. The bottom line is this whole thing with January 6th, guys, it was intentionally blown out of proportion. Not to mention, just for the record, there's a video floating around of Nancy Pelosi being interviewed by her daughter for a documentary where she acknowledged the fact that she was responsible for not deploying the National Guard, period. She oversees the Capitol. Muriel Bowser oversees the city of Washington, D.C. Yeah, you're telling me that the president's got to come in and tell you how to run your own entities? Oh, you don't want him to do that anyway. So which way is it going to be, guys? Tom, I want to go back to Trump for 1 second. They came after him about Charlottesville. I think that's the place in West Virginia or wherever it was. And we had the Proud Boys shows up. Listen, this guy has to denounce any radical extreme group, regardless of which side of the aisle they're on. But he made a point. What people don't understand, we have a lot of people who are misguided and misdirected. And if you want to know why, just listen to this crap coming at you every day through the media of what the Democrats are spewing. Hey, guys, I'm not telling you who to vote for. Tom's about to jump on me for saying that. But the bottom line is you better see the forest for the trees, because this is about the future of this country and the future of your children. And guys, listen, I am extremely liberal, socially speaking. When it comes to your safety, I do not negotiate. By the way, as long as I'm on this rant, and Tom, I want you to come in on this afterwards, Chris Schwecker, colleague of Tom Fuentes, has been gravely concerned about this border. I've been speaking about this border since I started doing this podcast over 3 years ago. I told him it would come back and bite us, and now it has. We've got him in the country sexually assaulting and murdering our citizens, oftentimes our women. Tom, what would Schwecker say at this point? Not that I'm asking you to speak for him.
Well, he's already said this in many contexts. He's been on cable news. He's been on this podcast. He said it many times that what's happened with the border is a travesty. And beyond that, discussing if you want to go into the whole FBI and Merrick Garland, Department of Justice, Christopher Wray, FBI director, the dual standard of justice that we now have, that they're showing us they have. So I think he's disgusted with the FBI as much as I have, because when we both retired, I had to retire mandatory age 57 in 2008. And I think Chris was either a year before or a year after me. We both retired. We were in the same generation of executives having to retire at that time. And then what happens with the FBI later, starting around 2015, 16, the whole Russiagate, many of the other really shenanigans going on. He's as disgusted as I am. And we're looking at things that Bureau agents have done in the last couple of years that were just unthinkable and unspeakable at the time we were agents. All the way up, we came up together, same generation.
Tom, I don't. We can get into the FBI again and how they've destroyed this incredible organization that I still believe is an incredible organization. the fish stinks from the head down. And I want to be fair to this discussion by saying, Thomas, my opinion, you would know better than I would. When you go to Washington as a higher up in the Bureau, you brush up against the politics. Same thing with Secret Service, any of these jobs. The FBI had always been able to maintain, I would say, their independence in a sense of really becoming part of this political fray. That changed with Strzok, McCabe, Lisa Page, James Comey. I mean, look, they did what they did. For me, the exercise right now is to reinstill and reestablish the credibility of the FBI because, guys, it may be one of the most important law enforcement institutions in the country. I want to say it that way, and I'm saying it cautiously because on a local level, they're all very important too. Secret Service is important, ATF, DEA. But, look, we're at a crisis, guys. I want to go back 1 second to the debate, and I really feel terrible about saying this because I am so overprotective of women without oppressing them would make you sick. What is going through Jill Biden's brain? That she allegedly sleeps with this man and she does not see the condition of this individual. Do you know what elderly abuse is, ladies and gentlemen? We're there. This guy's in trouble. And what really alarms me is how he floats in and out of this cognitive state. I'm wondering how that's occurring. And I'm not going to give you a definitive answer as to how, but they could be giving him drugs that gives him clarity for small windows of time. This has gotten to the point where it's critical. By the way, Tom, I don't know if you heard this. You've been out on a cruise, enjoying himself prudently. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, is moving to invoke the 25th Amendment, which lends itself to the removal of the President of the United States as a result of his inability to carry out his duties. God, Tom, we haven't even talked about what foreign leaders are looking at this point. The rest of this world is looking at this country and going like, what's going on over there? The infighting is incredible. I have to tell you something interesting about the Democrats, to go back to them. I watched him with Bernie Sanders. I've watched him with Joe Biden basically manipulate this poor guy who doesn't know the time of day half the time. What's the break point? I'm just curious. How many lies are you prepared to tell the American public so you can try to maintain control of this country? Guys, let me tell you something else about your founding fathers, this Second Amendment. And this is a complete swing in posture for me because 30 plus years ago, when I was approached by people to learn how to fire guns, I said, listen, you don't have that cloth. You don't have that stomach to hurt people. Don't get a gun. You'll lose it. Today, I caution everyone. Your police aren't going to be there without going off on a tangent about the cops and taking the claws out of them. And that's a really tough expression, claws. There's a negative derogatory assessment to it. But guys, we're at in a crisis here, and I encourage people, be prepared to take care of your family. Tom, what do you think is going on abroad in reference to some of these political leaders? Because Tom Fuentes happened to have run the FBI's international operation, which I think was about 80 countries. Is that correct, Tom?
We had offices in 80 countries covering about 190 countries. Everybody covering everywhere but North Korea and Cuba at the time. So, but the 80 offices and embassies and consulates around the world outside the United States, some of those embassy offices, like South Africa, for instance, our legal attaché in South Africa covered 14 countries in southern part of Africa and Mauritius and a couple of islands in the Indian Ocean. So many of the offices covered several countries. But, the right now, I could tell you what's interesting. It's a phenomenon I've discovered in the last most recent years. I've been to over 100 countries and still traveling internationally now. And when I'm traveling internationally, even after all of the scandal that's come up with the FBI and the double standard of justice and everything, overseas, the FBI is still regarded as the best law enforcement agency in the world. When people ask, what did I do or where was I employed? And I tell them, they're just, oh, God, the FBI, that's fabulous. Oh, we love the FBI. And I don't care if it's in Asia, South America, Europe, everywhere I've been. My wife can attest to it. She's been with me during many of these conversations. People just go crazy thinking the FBI is the greatest in the world, like it used to be. Now, look at the surveys in the United States where you even have some American politicians saying maybe the FBI should be defunded. Maybe they should be dismantled or disbanded for some of the things that have gone on in the last 7 or 8 years for sure. So the reputation of the Bureau is way lower in the United States than anywhere else in the world. And, and I attribute that to the lack of leadership, starting with Comey and continuing with Christopher Wray, that they have brought the FBI down to a level I never thought possible in my lifetime of nearly 30 years as special agent.
Tom, I still believe the FBI is the finest law enforcement agency in the world. I still believe that, even though we've had some bumps in the road with some of these knuckleheads.
I didn't say they're not. I just said the reputation, though, has gone way downhill in the United States to where even the public, the reputation is much lower than it used to be. It used to be in the 70, 80% approval range. Now it's below 50% nationally.
And ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, how we got there. It's very simple. We decided to play politics. We decided to interfere and deceive. Right. Even the FBI, some of these individuals decided they were going to deceive in order to carry out an agenda. And I'm talking about Peter Strzok and Lisa Page in particular. James Comey did the same thing. He intentionally deceived you as to the gravity of what Hillary Clinton did. He just changed some language. Guys, the truth is the truth. I'm not tap dancing around this. I'm not telling anybody who to vote for. You better figure this one out for yourself. You may not be happy with these candidate selections, but figure out which one is going to protect you first and foremost. And contrary to public opinion, it's hard to argue with what went on the 4 years before Joe Biden got into office, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm feeling this economy, and I'm not going off on that tangent. I want to go back to world leaders, Tom, for a second. World leaders, some of whom are adversaries, are measuring us right now, ladies and gentlemen. They see a vulnerability. We have to make sure that they don't do something in haste to capitalize on that. I'm going to talk to you right now about Russian having a part of a naval fleet, submarine, and some warships off the coast of Florida. Tom, do me a favor. Give us a little insight as to this practice with the Russians and with us as well, so we can get a little wind out of the sails.
Since the 19th century, we've had presidents impose the Monroe Doctrine, that no foreign powers can have their military in our hemisphere. And that was brought out, of course, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, October 1962, when we discover the Soviet Union installing nuclear missiles in Cuba. And, and then we say, wait a minute, some of these missiles can hit Washington, D.C. or New York or Chicago, within 30 minutes. And so we can't have that. And, the whole thing, was later resolved. Of course, it got resolved because in the negotiations, Kennedy promised Khrushchev, okay, you take the missiles out of Cuba, we'll take our missiles out of Turkey. So we've had missiles in place very close to the Soviet Union all along. And then in recent times, our Navy every year conducts exercises in the Baltic Sea, off the coast of the Soviet Union, or now Russia. So that's the equivalent of if the Russian Navy, we got all excited because they had a couple ships go to Cuba. If the Russian Navy decided with other navies in South America and the Caribbean to have exercises in the Gulf of Mexico, just a few miles off of our southern states, Florida, Mississippi, all the southern states that we have, oh my God, that'd be a declaration of war. And yet we do this every day on the other side. Weaponry close to Russia, ships close to Russia or in the Black Sea. And now, like you were talking about a little bit earlier, saying that we started giving missiles and equipment to the Ukraine to fight Russia. And originally, Biden said, you will not use that to send missiles into Russia. You can fight Russian troops on the ground in the Ukraine. That's fine. And then we find out that our missiles have been used by the Ukrainians, and some of them are very sophisticated. So it really takes our people to be able to launch them and fire them and aim them using satellite information and all that we haven't taught the Ukrainians how to do. So we've actually had U.S. personnel firing U.S. missiles, and in the last couple of months, into Russia, into civilian areas, killing civilians in Russia, including, recently using cluster bombs in Crimea and other things. Now, after having done it and having been caught doing that, then Joe Biden a couple of weeks ago says he authorizes it now. The Ukrainians are now authorized to fire missiles into Russia proper. Now, Putin and the Russian military have been saying you're crossing red lines here, launching military. That's an act of war. So if the U.S. is sending our missiles, our technology, our personnel to fire them into Russia on purpose, then if Russia's been saying you're crossing a red line, and at some point we're going to feel free to attack the countries that are supporting this. The UK is one of them. Some of the missiles from Germany, Poland, some of the other places are also coming in. So all of a sudden, in the months ahead, we could easily have Russia fire missiles into London, Paris, Berlin, Warsaw, and if they felt like it, into the U.S. If it comes down to that. If we're going to do a war against Russia, we better be prepared for what Russia might do back. And this thing about the flotilla going into Cuba of Russian ships, that's nothing. Russia has submarines, stealthy submarines off the coast of the U.S., the Atlantic coast and the Pacific coast, that can fire nuclear weapons into the United States that will land in the U.S. within 8 minutes. So, if we're worried about a couple of ships going to Cuba, they can launch on us anytime they want from a very close range, and we can do the same at the other end.
And Tom, what's interesting is that, and you fed right into it, where I was going with this when I opened up this conversation, was that what we're doing is tantamount to an act of war. That's the point I was going to drive home. Tom drove it home for you. This is very, very dangerous, guys. Many people in our political system, both sides of the aisle, are saying this is the closest we've been to nuclear war ever. And I hate to say it, look who's at the helm. My question is...
And let me add something to that that's very important. Andy Jacobson has written several books about our military, a recent one called Nuclear War, describing in detail and having interviewed officials from several administrations going back, 50 years in the United States. And, she describes how in our system, in the United States, an attaché of the military follows the president around all the time, carrying codes and electronic gear to transmit the launch codes for nuclear war. That's called the nuclear football, the nickname that he carries around. Now, normally, when you see the president walking, from one airplane to the helicopter or whatever in the field, you see that attaché not too far away. And the reason, she says, is that the decision to launch nuclear weapons on our part, you have a 6-minute window. Our satellites in the air are over all of the missile silos in Russia and everything. When they get ready to launch a missile and start turning on the jets, open up the doors and the heat plume comes out, those satellites pick it up immediately. They know immediately when the missile has been launched within a couple of minutes, and that missile will hit the United States, depending 28 to 32 minutes away. Now, the president apparently has 6 minutes to decide to launch the nuclear weapons back. And the president is the only authority to do it. Doesn't need the Joint Chiefs, doesn't need the Senate or Congress or House or anybody. The Senate, the launching is the sole authority of the United States president and only the president, and the president needs nobody else. And that military guy carrying that football would hand it to him. He could punch in the buttons and launch. Now, that authority is right now in the hands of Joe Biden.
Tom, the real problem here is, and I just kind of keep things simple. It isn't so much that we've clearly identified that there's a problem with the president. It's the cover-up right now. In law enforcement, we have an interesting expression. It's never the crime, it's the cover-up. I'm listening to Democrat leadership parade around, encouraging him to stay in this race, encouraging him to remain in office. Do they understand that we're playing with fire? What happens if, for whatever reason, tomorrow, the next day, next week, Putin decides he's had enough of this garbage of our munitions being deployed in his country, and he decides to undertake a tactical nuclear strike? Who's having this conversation in this country? You see my point? We have a lot of people right now that should unequivocally be removed from office. Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi. There's a list of them. Blumenthal, Raskin, Gavin Newsom, anyone that's parading around intentionally lying to and misleading this country as to the gravity of this problem with the president. Listen to what Tom is telling you right now. We're worried about an election. You better worry about the future of this country. And Tom, listen, Tom is far more literate than most people are, but I want to go back to this conversation with you, Tom. So realizing what you just said, where's the FBI? Where's our intelligence community go like, oh, whoa, wait a second. We're responsible for the safety of this country. Our FBI is, Department of Justice. When are they going to step in and say, hey, guys, what are we doing with this man who has access to our nuclear weapons? Tom?
I don't know what authority they would use to do it in that sense. The FBI investigating federal crimes, investigating national security matters and all of that.
Tom, let me interrupt you. Is it not a federal crime to lie to the American public as to the mental state or it's not a crime to lie to us as to what's going on with the president? Maybe this is something that should be explored.
Well, maybe, but I think it's not really a prosecutable crime because their excuse is going to be in their defense. They're not psychiatrists or medical doctors or anything else. How do they know how bad he is? And the fact that we, don't believe your lying eyes and ears, what you saw and heard during the debate of, Biden. And we've been seeing that all along, for months. But there you have it where he can't hide. They can't hide from it. The mainstream media can't twist it because there it was, live TV and radio to know exactly what Biden's condition is, exactly what he's capable of. That's true. Now, Gavin Newsom saying he's sharp as a tack, or the media, or any of these guys. What's the lie? It's their opinion, and they're not doctors. That's what they're going to say. So and let's go back to the FBI can investigate till the cows come home. Who's going to prosecute? Merrick Garland? No.
That's the root of the problem, no. Tom.
So, well, that is the root of the problem. Is when you have a guy like Biden as president and the people that he's put in to run these cabinet offices, from Attorney General Merrick Garland to Mayorkas running our border and Homeland Security Department and some of the other ones, he's put in a parade of morons to run significant offices in this country. Buttigieg, Department of Transportation, where is he when we have trains wiping out villages and East Palestine, Ohio, and ships running aground and bridges being knocked down in the harbors and all of that? Yeah, that's planes, doors falling off of airplanes and everything else going on. He's our Secretary of Transportation. He's doing a great job. All of these people that Biden has picked for various positions, starting with his vice president, it was based on their color, their sex, trans, you name it, LGBTQ. That was a priority. And what we have lost in the federal government is meritocracy. People don't get to the higher positions based on merit. That's one reason for the crisis in the military, being 50,000 troops understaffed in their recruiting, because they're looking at this right now is an able-bodied young man joins the military or young woman joins the military, and they're looking at people getting promoted above them based on, again, their identity, sex, race, trans, and all of that. And they're saying, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to be, perpetually under the thumb of somebody who got that job and wasn't qualified to have that job. So that's the problem we're in, is all the way down the line. That's the ramifications. So no, the FBI is not going to investigate anybody for lying that Biden's in a great shape and he's competent, he's good.
Tom, there's got to be some mechanism in government that holds these people accountable for intentionally lying to the public. You know what's so sad is that every time you brush up against the Democrats, and guys, I'm not anti-Democrat, I'm just telling you the truth. Every time we brush up against them, there's another lie. You listen to Mayorkas at the border, right, Tom? The border's secure. How does this guy sleep at night that they're coming into this country? We just had an assault on a train in Chicago. We had a woman murdered in Maryland. Same guy carried out a heinous crime of sexual assault in LA. We had a woman murdered in Georgia. We're having it going on upstate New York. It's all over this country. And they stand there and they lie to you. And what I'm saying, Tom, to go back, where's the oversight here? I mean, I have to be candid with you. I'm suspect of the damn Republicans. They got to step on the gas here and get this country back somehow. And sadly, although Donald Trump may not be your ideal candidate in many ways, I got the memo on him. We didn't send him to finishing school. I got it. But I'm looking at what's going on here. Look at the condition of every one of your major cities, not just your borders. Criminal element is acting with impunity. You go to cities like Minneapolis, the roll calls are so low, that they're pleading with contiguous jurisdictions to have them send their law enforcement people to come in to work on their days off. This is getting out of control here, folks. I didn't get on today to attack the Democrats. I get on here today to tell you about the truth attached to our living in America today. And this thing with Joe Biden has taken me over the edge. Anyone that tells the public that this man's okay, he had a bad night. And I hate to keep getting amped up about this because this bumps into the future of our children. We're going to take a quick break, guys. You can see this thing has just touched a nerve with me today. I don't mind so much that the president's in trouble. I got it. I know politics. We've gone a step too far when we lack the honor, the integrity, the trustworthiness, the morality to know when it's time to call it a day. We're going to be right back, guys. Stay with us. This is Operation Truth. This is Tom Fuentes, and I'm Lou Palumbo. We'll be back with you in a moment.
Thank you for tuning in to Operation Truth. We are just taking a moment to remind you to go follow us at Operation Truth Official on TikTok. You can also find us at Operation Truth Official on Facebook and Instagram. Be a part of this conversation and join the operation.
The only mechanism to do it, if they don't actually, even if they violate a federal law, you don't have a mechanism in right now with the FBI and Merrick Garland to do anything about it. So except Republicans, except conservatives, go after them, go after people protesting in front of a daycare center or, an abortion clinic or whatever it might be. But, that's the way it is right now. The only mechanism that the founding fathers foresaw, thought would be adequate, is the polls, the voting on November 5th. Now, the problem with that is you don't want to be too critical of the Democrats. You don't want to go against them. How is it that Biden, you still have how many percent of people that'll vote for him right now, today? And the names you just mentioned, 30, 40%. Whoever voted against Nancy Pelosi, whoever voted against Schumer, whoever against
Tom,
Joaquin Jeffrey.
I heard these numbers too, buddy. I mean, you sit here going 33% of the people that watched the debate thought that he was okay. Are you criminally insane? Are you so filled with hate for one particular individual or an agenda that you're prepared to flush this country down the toilet? Tom, not for anything. As you can tell, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and we're going to continue this conversation. There's a little trouble in paradise also with the Democrats because they may have cut their nose to spite their face. Now they're at a crossroad where we're actively pursuing replacement of the president. This is on both sides of the aisle, not just the Republicans. Opens up an interesting can of worms. If he does step out, who becomes the front runner for the Democrats? Is it Gavin Newsom? Are you going to step on a female minority who's basically in position to take over? Because if you just follow the order of succession in our country, just to give you a couple of top ones, it's the vice president, Speaker of the House, Senate Pro Tem, Secretary of State. She's at the top of the list. And before we get off onto Gavin Newsom, if you want to talk about pathological liars, look at the condition of this magnificent state called California, its economic position and its social position. The crime in San Diego, LA, and San Francisco is through the roof under Democrat leadership. Look, I never decided, I didn't want to get out into a position on a podcast or in any type of medium to go after a political entity this way. But there's a problem here. And I want to go back to this issue about trouble in paradise. They're going to have a bloodbath in their own party because they're between the proverbial rock and the hard place. Do we let him stay and have him fumble some more? Guys, I listened to him speak the day after. They're jacking him with something, guys. That's what this is. They're drugging him. Adrenaline can do this to you. Adderall can do this to you in short windows of time. That's all I'm going to say to you. They could probably giving him steroids also, to be candid with you, or any number of other substances that would help him go into a better state. But how do you have such a span of cognitive state from the debate to the next day with this addressment. And I go back to his wife, shame on her. She should be ashamed of herself. I have to tell you, I don't like when we're overly critical about our elected officials. I don't think it lends itself to something. But when is the American public going to have enough of this insanity? That we're on the cusp. It's been getting crazy. We've hit the plateau of insanity right now. When you sit there telling me what I saw in that debate that I watched for an hour and a half, and then watched the follow-up with CNN, was all wrong. We're telling you how it is. I'd like to know how we get these jackasses out of office. Schumer, Hakeem, Raskin, Nadler, Schiff, the whole crew that love their agenda more than they love this country. I don't understand.
Lou, let's talk about a guy that's possibly the next president, Gavin Newsom. You brought him up. Now, he starts out, I served in the FBI as an assistant in charge of the office in the mid-90s. Then I left one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And like I said, been to over 100 countries. Magnificent city. Gavin Newsom becomes the mayor and trashes the city. Not the homeless. The streets. He ruins the city. That's not enough for Gavin Newsom. He's ambitious. So he wants to be the governor. Gets elected to the governor. He basically has driven California, the state, into the ground. Thousands of people leaving, businesses leaving, all of the problems in that state. Sanctuary cities being overrun, the migrants coming across the border now into California from Mexico. And that's not enough. He's ruined California now, but no, why not make him president? And the fact that in the discussion of his name, he's considered one of the front runners to be a presidential candidate, possibly the next president that replaces Biden, possibly somehow getting the nomination in an open convention this summer. Now, a guy that's ruined one of the beautiful cities in the world, one of the best states in the world, let's give him the whole country and see. And he won't have as long a way to go because Biden has done a great job bringing the country downhill. But it's a good head start for Gavin Newsom. Let him finish the job and ruin the country.
Just so everybody's brought up to speed on California, I lived out there. I ran the security for the Academy Awards around the time of the Iraqi conflict. I ran the Golden Globes for 14 years. The Sinatras were my clients: Sharon Stone, Dustin Hoffman, Jennifer Aniston, Courtney Cox, Matt LeBlanc. I had the whole set for the Friends, by the way. I did the whole security for the set, guys. Elton John, you pick them. Kim Bates, I worked for them. I ran the sets for Vanilla Sky when Tom Cruise was making the money, and the company they hired couldn't control the streets. So I know California. I bumped into it in 1971. Let me tell you, California today, well, we're going to push electric cars down your throat. And suddenly all that gas tax associated with every gallon of gas you buy is gone. Now we're suggesting, you ready, folks? I hope you're sitting down. 30 cents a mile assessment every year when you're driving California to offset the loss of that revenue. The state's running about $70 billion in the hole. It's $1.6 trillion in debt. It's got a deficit of $70 billion. This guy can't tell you the same story twice. He had the audacity with this joker, Sean Hannity, and that's exactly what he is, because Sean threw him a bunch of softballs. I saw the interview. He's busy trying to butter his butt, to put it in plain English. Corporations come to California to flourish. They used to. Not anymore, folks. They're leaving there in record numbers. They're going to places that are more tax-friendly. Gavin Newsom's program is, we're going to take care of everybody coming into the country illegally on the backs of the working class people. Guys, I've been taking care of people so long I forgot when I wasn't. I don't do it on anybody's back. If I'm going to incur the expense, I'll incur the expense myself. Once again, we go back to some very basic concepts: honor, integrity, truth, trustworthiness, all lacking. The notion that they would prop this guy up is just sickening. He's dangerous, this guy. By the way, most of the people in the Democrat Party today are dangerous. I've come to that conclusion after this debate. But I can't wait to see how many of them have the cojones to stand up against these jokers like Schumer and Pelosi, who are trying to tell you the president doesn't need to be removed. Tragically, he does. But I got to be honest with you, I've never had a high opinion of him. anyway in any part of his political career. And the stunt that really took me over the edge was denying this little granddaughter of his who did absolutely nothing except be born in this world. That told me more about the Biden family than it told me about anything Donald Trump has done. I don't care what Donald Trump did with some porn star, did with a, I don't care. I learned from the Clinton administration, you have to separate the personal and the professional lives of these men. Whether people like this or not, Bill Clinton couldn't be a Democrat today. He's very silent as a rule. The reality of it is his second term with Newt Gingrich, he got a lot done. He balanced the budget. Undeniable. You got to separate their personal and private lives. That's the truth. But at some point, guys, you got to come in from the rain here. I don't know what to say. And, you know, we have been off air a little bit. We're kind of regrouping. We won't get into the nuances of what we're doing. I'll leave that to the hierarchy. Tom's fully aware of it. He's going to be a party to it. So are these young gentlemen that have loaned us the studio today. But we wanted to get out because we have just crossed the line when we're watching a president that cannot put a cognitive sentence together, talking about he killed Medicaid. He had no people die on his watch. I heard them go up and down what Donald Trump said. Part of the reason Donald Trump was accused of so many lies is because of his failure, as I go back to the beginning of this podcast, to properly address some of these words or notions that were directed towards him, like alley cat and convicted felon. You know, I want to say one thing also. This guy posing as the president keeps coming out with this no one is above the law bullshit. You better understand that's going to resonate with your son. I can't wait to see what you do with his sentencing. That's all I'm going to tell you. If they go to put your son 10 years in prison and you've got the juice to stop that, let me see what you do then. Or maybe he'll be above the law. And by the way, folks, he's got 2 trials coming up. I believe it's 2 in California that are way worse than what went on with this whole gun stunt in Delaware. This is the simple, sad fact of the matter here. Guys, this is our country. I don't care about the Democrats. I don't care about the Republicans. I care about my children and all young people here because they're entitled to something better than this. For everyone that goes to the polls and votes for these people we're electing, you're entitled to something better than this. By the way, while we're on the topic of voting again, I hate to go back to this, Tom, and I'm sure you'll get on this with me. Why is it the Democrats need you to be able to mail in ballots 2 and 3 months in advance? And why am I finding out that we're actually mailing out more ballots than there are people registered to vote? Why do the Democrats think you should be allowed to walk into a polling station and not have to identify yourself? What planet are you on? And the American public, how stupid are we? This shows you how little they think of us, that they keep promoting these bizarre, counterproductive concepts that lend itself to the destruction of this country. You know, I don't know what to say to everyone. I go back and tell you, I'm not endorsing any presidents right now. That's not what I'm about. I expect people to put your bias away and go out and make an unbiased assessment of who's going to take this country in a better direction. And maybe Donald Trump isn't the consummate elected official. You know, I love the critiques of him. Uncontrollable, he's rogue, unpredictable. You know, sadly, that's what this country needs today because the status quo manner in which we operate doesn't work any longer. And I point that finger at both sides of the aisle. Anyway, Tom, we're going to wrap this for today. I want to give you closing assessments of things because you've heard me go off all damn podcast here. I'm just so sick of listening to these lies. This is taking me to a whole new point with this thing with Joe Biden. You know, let me say one thing to you all also before I turn this over to Tom. I know why we elected Joe Biden. He was the least toxic Democrat. Everybody perceived him as Uncle Joe. Rather innocuous, harmless. Look at what this man has done to your country in 3.5 years. Your economy is shot. Your foreign policies are shot. We're involved in 2 proxy wars. Your gasoline is more than doubled. I go to California to work. I'm paying $6. It goes right through me. Oh, that's right. Let me bump into Gavin again. That's the gas companies, the oil companies are gouging. Ladies and gentlemen, they only gouge California, by the way. They're not gouging the other states that are the gasoline's half the price. I just came out of an area around Atlanta, Georgia, where I was working. It was $2.89. That's right, Gavin. The oil companies are gouging, but they only gouge California. Why don't you tell the American public about the fact that you put in one tax alone is 85 cents a gallon? Nah, let's keep avoiding the truth, guys. Listen, put your political lens down. Start to think about your children. Every day I get up, and this is not a difficult concept, I don't make a move before I figure out how it impacts my children. Honestly, whether it's take a project on, go to work, go for a workout, I do nothing before I assess how it will intersect with my children's lives. I've had my life and a half. For those of you that don't know me, I was single till I was 54. I've been to the mountain. Believe me, I traveled this country. I've traveled this world. I've had the benefit of meeting a diversity of people, AOC, that taught me about life, about why it's okay we're different, which they're having a real hard time with. Let me let go for today because, as you can see, guys, I'm amped up. I'll make you laugh. I went to the doctor about 2 weeks ago. My blood pressure was 110/70. My heart rate was 54. Go figure. Tom, I want to go to you, Tom, and have you clean up this.
No, I think you got me amped up now.
That's almost impossible. Come on. You're as cool as they come.
All right, I calm down already. No, you're right. And I think that, we're at a point now where we just can't hesitate to say what the Democratic Party is, and it's not, if you're a Republican or a Democrat or whatever. It's just what party has done so much damage to this country in such a short time as they have in 3.5 years of Joe Biden and all the people that he brought in, the people that aren't qualified, the people that are incompetent, but they happen to be the right color, the right sex, the right everything else. So I think that as long as we still have that, and then try to have policies where we're eliminating any effort at meritocracy, whether it's getting into college or whether it's getting a job. Now when you fly on whatever airline you want to fly on, and you see in their magazine, we're using diversity to pick our pilots, not meritocracy, not the best person qualified to fly the plane or the best engineers to keep the plane from having doors and tail feathers fall off, all that stuff that's going on. No, that's the problem that, we're doing everything we can, but like you talked about, hold people accountable. We don't hold anybody accountable. Who do we hold? I've talked about, for years, living in the Washington, D.C. area in and out. The only person in Washington that gets held accountable is the coach of the Washington football team, whether it was the Redskins or now the Commanders. The coach gets held accountable. They get a new coach. Not the only person in town. The only way to hold anybody accountable is elections. We have one coming up. It's pretty damn important.
Tom, I hate to say it this way, but it's probably going to be the most defining election in the history of the country. And not to scare you, ladies and gentlemen, but I've been in this law enforcement community over 50 years. I've had some incredible journeys, so much good fortune. It haunts me as to why. Maybe that's why I'm here speaking to you, because, I believe in reconciliation. I believe in making room for everyone. I believe in staying in your lane. I believe in not judging people until you've walked in their shoes. I have a very open mind on things. We are at a crossroad, and I promise you this. If the Democrats continue to maintain control of this country the next 4 years, this isn't going to be the America you recognize. And I'm not saying that to be a drama queen or to scare you. I'm just telling you the truth. This has been Operation Truth. Tom, I thank you as always. Going to see you again next week. And thank you for plugging into us today, guys. Thank you.